both fairing halves with our recovery vessels, Miss Tree and Miss Chief. Now we've got a short duration today, so we won't see those views live on the webcast, but we'll push out an update one way or another after the fairing has made its way back to Earth. We are continuing to count down to liftoff, but if for some reason we have to call a hold on today's launch, we do have a backup opportunity tomorrow, Tuesday, February 18th at 9:42 a.m. Eastern. But at this time, all systems are go for an on-time liftoff.
My name is Jessie Anderson, and I'm a lead manufacturing engineer here at SpaceX. As Lauren mentioned, today's mission will be shorter than previous Starlink missions, and that's because we are executing a direct inject of the Starlink satellites into an elliptical or oval-shaped orbit. In prior Starlink missions, we deployed the satellites into a 290-kilometer circular orbit, which required 2 burns of the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. Keep in mind the stack of 60 Starlink satellites combined is one of the heaviest payloads we fly, so putting them directly into this orbit requires more vehicle performance and makes recovery more challenging. Going forward, and starting with today, we will deploy the satellites shortly after the first burn of the second stage, putting the Starlink satellites into an elliptical orbit. Once checkouts are complete, the satellites will then use their onboard ion thrusters to move into their intended orbits, an operational altitude of 550 kilometers. With this change, our webcast runtime will be a little bit shorter. We'll wrap up just after deployment at T plus 15 minutes or so. The Falcon 9 that you see on the pad there has been loading propellants since T minus 35 minutes, and as a reminder, we use a rocket-grade kerosene, or RP1, and super chilled liquid oxygen, or LOX, to power the Falcon 9. Currently, our RP1 is nearly fully loaded on the first stage, which is the bottom 2/3 of the vehicle that you see there on your screen, and that top 1/3 is our second stage, and at this time, the second stage is fully fueled with RP1. LOX loading is underway on both stages and will continue to be topped off right until the last minute of the countdown. The stack of 60 satellites is safely enclosed inside of the 17-foot diameter payload fairing, and there you can see on your screen is the flat stacked satellites. There is the fairing at the top of the vehicle, that pointed enclosure there. And once we reach the vacuum of space, we will deploy the fairing as the second stage continues on its way to its final orbit. As for weather, we had some rough weather over the weekend, but so far today, weather is looking good for an on-time launch. We will continue to monitor this all the way down to T-0. The Air Force range is prepared to support today's mission. So with that, the vehicle, satellites, weather, and range are all looking good for an on-time liftoff just a few minutes from now.
As I mentioned at the top of the webcast, today's launch will be the 4th flight of this particular Falcon 9 booster. This booster previously flew on a Dragon resupply mission, CRS-17, which flew to the space station in May of 2019, followed by CRS-18 in July 2019, and most recently a commercial satellite launch on December 17th, 2019. It's been just under 8 weeks since that booster returned, which makes this our fastest turnaround to date. Long term, we hope to continue to drive that turnaround time down even further, with rocket launches looking more similar to commercial air travel, where the planes get basic checkouts, they get refueled, and then they head right back out. SpaceX successfully landed its first booster back in December 2015 after a long series of attempts with various endings, some more spectacular than others. And if we land today's booster, it will mark our 50th successful landing. It's really crazy to think just how much has changed in only 5 years. Our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, is currently stationed 350 miles off the coast of Florida, waiting for what will be the 4th landing of this booster. Just as we had to work through a lot of trial and error with booster recovery, we're now engaging in that same process for fairing recovery. To date, we have caught 3 fairing halves with our recovery vessels and fished a number of others out of the water, and we'll continue pushing forward with this effort with the goal of hopefully making this as routine as our rocket landings.
We are currently just over 4 minutes from liftoff. Falcon 9 is now moving into the final stages of the countdown. At T-7 minutes, engine chill began. This is where we allow a small amount of the super chilled liquid oxygen to flow into the Merlin engine turbo pumps prior to the full flow of liquid oxygen into the vehicle, and that's to avoid any shocks to the system. Liquid oxygen is also what's creating those white clouds around Falcon 9, as you can see on your screen. We continue to load super chilled liquid oxygen, or LOX, into the stage until just before liftoff. And when that super chilled LOX comes in contact with the ambient air around it, it creates those clouds surrounding the vehicle that you can see right there. At T-minus 3.5 minutes, the transporter Rector has already moved away from the rocket slightly, and this allows some clearance for Falcon 9 to lift off of our launch pad. The first and second stages are both nearly fully loaded with 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen. First stage should finish prop loading at T-minus 3 minutes, and second stage at T-minus 2 minutes. At T-minus 60 seconds, be sure to listen in for the call out that Falcon 9 is in startup. This means that the rocket's autonomous internal flight computers have taken over the launch countdown. The Starlink payload continues to be healthy. The Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket. Weather is looking good, and the range is green for launch. So let's listen into the last few minutes of the countdown.
Stage 2 LOX rate goes down. Falcon 9 from startup.
LD is go for launch.
T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5.
Power and telemetry nominal.
It is T plus 47 seconds, and we have just had liftoff of our Falcon 9 vehicle, taking our Starlink payload to its targeted orbit.